let's pretend I'll come in, whatever. Okay. Hi, Wes. Thank you so much for being here today with me.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah. My name is Anca. I'm a student at Northwest Florida State College in the BSN program. One of the assignments I had for this semester in the Family and Community Health Nursing was to assess the population of Walton County. I did my clinicals at the Walton County Health Department, but the overall results for the county were that cardiovascular disease and hypertension are still the number one health concerns for the community. Just a few statistics I wanted to bring up to you are that according to the Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention, are that about 610,000 people in the United States die of heart disease. That is about 1 in 4 deaths in America are because of heart disease. Heart disease is the leading cause of death for both men and women. Every year, about 735,000 Americans have a heart attack. Of these, about 525,000 are new heart attacks, and about 210,000 happen to people that already had a heart attack. So you have been diagnosed with hypertension and high cholesterol since your early 20s, right?
Correct.
Is there any heart disease in your family?
Yes, my father.
How extensive is that?
Triple bypass plus 9 or 10 stents.
How old was he when he had the bypass?
53.
Okay. So, obviously, pretty extensive heart disease in your family. So I would like to talk to you more about hypertension and cardiovascular disease, how it happens, how to prevent it, what it really means, if that's okay with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. I hope the following information I will present to you will help you better understand how everything happens, and maybe I can give you some good points that will help you better control it and maybe prevent cardiovascular disease since you don't already have it. I just wanted to start with a few fun facts. I don't want to get into all the boring stuff about facts, but I just want to give you a few facts about the heart. Do you know about how big the heart is? Fist size? Yep, you're correct. So here is pretty much the true size of a human healthy heart. In some people, it could be larger because of cardiovascular disease and it enlarges. It's a muscle. Also, do you know about how many times it beats in one day? No, it's about 100,000 times. And this, again, it's in a healthy heart. It beats about 100,000 times a day. It pumps about a third of a cup of blood per minute in an adult. And also in one day, it pumps about 6,000 to 7,500 liters of blood. And that is about 1,500 or 2,000 gallons of blood a day. Now, an adult has about 5 liters of blood available in the body at all times. So, here. Now, so first of all, I want to talk to you about blood pressure. Blood pressure is the pressure of blood in the circulatory system. It's represented by 2 numbers. The higher number represents the systolic blood pressure, and that happens when I should have started with a little bit of anatomy of the heart. Your heart has 4 chambers, It's got the two ventricles at the bottom and the two atria on top. Now, the ventricles are the two lower chambers are responsible for pumping blood to your body. It pumps blood to all your organs, to all your tissues. Blood pressure is represented by two numbers, like I said. The systolic pressure is when the ventricles contract, it's when the ventricles pump the blood throughout your body, and that's the higher number. And a desired normal number for that is 120 or less. Diastolic pressure is the bottom number, which is lower, and it's represented by when the ventricles relax, and that's when they fill with blood. And that desired number should be 80 or less. So I guess we can conclude from this that good blood pressure is 120 over 80 or less. Of course, there's some people that have always had higher blood pressure and they function just normal. They have no issues throughout life. There's people that have lower blood pressure that can function just fine with a lower blood pressure. I just want to talk to you about things you can do to prevent or to control your blood pressure, and if complications occur, what can happen. So I'll just okay, so like I said, normal blood pressure is 120s or 80s. If one's blood pressure readings are consistently over 140, over 90, that is considered to be high blood pressure. That means that the pressure that your arteries encounter is just higher than they can endure. Arteries are blood vessels that carry oxygenated blood to your tissues and organs. It usually takes several years for high blood pressure to cause any kind of symptoms that you would notice. And even when it does cause problems, the symptoms are often mild or non-specific because they're so common. They can be caused by any other conditions. Some of the possible symptoms are dizziness, flush face, nosebleeds, headaches. You can get blurred vision, and even shortness of breath. There are three main factors that I wanted to talk to you about that could affect blood pressure. The first one is cardiac output. This represents the amount of blood that your heart pumps, that the ventricles pump out with every heartbeat in a minute. And normally the blood pressure goes up if your cardiac output goes up. And some factors that affect cardiac output is one of the big ones is the heart rate. And things like stimulants like alcohol, caffeine, smoking, all these things can increase your heart rate and eventually increase your cardiac output and get your blood pressure high. So it's very important to just limit your intake or consumption of any of these kind of stimulants. The other factor that could affect your blood pressure is blood volume, and the more volume, the higher the pressure. And two of the main things are trauma and kidney disease. And when I say trauma, if you get into any kind of trauma to your body's instinct is to hold on to blood, which is to volume. So you will not have any output, and anything you take in, it will just increase your blood volume and it will increase your blood pressure. So, and then the third factor that can affect this is resistance. and that means anything that could work against normal blood flow through your arteries. And there's two things. It's the atherosclerosis and arteriosclerosis, and I'm going to cover this, explain what this means. Any of these two can either narrow or completely block the flow through your arteries. The atherosclerosis is a buildup of fatty deposits on the inner walls of your arteries. Just imagine your arteries are just like hollow tubes that go throughout your body. So atherosclerosis is when you have too much intake of cholesterol, bad cholesterol, and fats, and these start depositing on the inner wall of the arteries. And the more bad fats and the more cholesterol you eat, the larger the plaque deposit. So this in time will narrow the blood flow, and your blood carries oxygen, so it will deplete your tissues and organs of oxygen, and they need oxygen to function properly. The plaque that keeps building up, they can eventually burst, and they can trigger a blood clot. When they burst, it will trigger your clotting mechanism, which will trigger your platelets. Platelets are a component, the clotting component of your blood, and it will trigger them to just clump up on top of the plaque and form a clot. At any time, that plaque or clot can rupture and travel through your system and just get lodged somewhere. It can get lodged in your brain and cause a stroke. It can lodge in your heart and cause a heart attack. So it's a very dangerous situation. The arteriosclerosis is a condition that happens over time. That means that your arteries get stiff. Usually healthy arteries are very flexible, so if you have an increased volume of blood, they will dilate and allow the blood flow. But when you have arteriosclerosis, the arteries harden and they're not flexible anymore. So if you have an increased amount of blood volume, it will not allow increase in diameter. It will not allow the blood to flow correctly, so it will just increase the pressure on them, which will eventually damage the walls. So usually healthy arteries, they just expand with each heartbeat, and they help to reduce the blood pressure on the wall. So another resistant factor is the blood thickness or viscosity. Protein and especially fats will increase the consistency of the blood. So blood pressure will go up if because your heart will work harder to pump thick blood versus regular thickness blood. So over time, blood pressure will damage the wall of the arteries, they can make them either weak or they can make them rough. If the artery wall becomes thinner, weak, that could just create like an outpouch, a pocket where the blood flows, and if you have consistent high blood pressure, that out pocket can burst and cause a hemorrhage, and that's called an aneurysm. And if it bleeds in surrounding tissue, it could be potentially fatal. If your artery wall becomes thick, it could form the plaque. And as the plaque enlarges, the blood flow decreases, and the the blood components, like I said earlier, can stick to the plaque, forming clots, so they can further reduce or completely block the blood flow. And so I just wanted to point out to you, there's a little demonstration here for you. This is just a little bit of damage to the artery, and it shows that injury to the artery wall will allow deposits to just collect on the wall, and there's further increase of deposits, and there's a clot forming that can eventually completely block the blood flow. So do you have any questions for me so far? Does
No.
everything make
Mhm.
sense? And okay? Uncontrolled or untreated hypertension, like I said, can cause either a stroke, or it can cause a heart attack, or kidney damage, or even renal damage. If you have the optic nerve here, if your pressure is high continuously, it will put pressure on the nerve, and it will eventually cause vision damage. As far as cardiovascular disease, there are many factors that will contribute to its development. Some people are born with conditions that will predispose them to heart disease, genetic conditions, like probably in your case, your father has heart disease, and since you were in your 20s and you were still pretty active, and you acquired hypertension and high cholesterol. But there's also, most of the people who develop it they do so because of a combination of factors, such as poor diet, lack of physical activity, alcohol intake, and smoking, to just name a few. The more factors a person has, the higher the risk to develop heart disease. Many of the factors of cardiovascular disease cause problems because they lead to atherosclerosis, which is the narrowing of the arteries. This will develop throughout many years without causing any symptoms, and it can happen in any part of the body. If it happens anywhere around your heart, like we see here, if the atherosclerosis, the deposit of plaque, happens in the arteries that supply your heart with blood, you can see here little fatty deposits.
Mm-hmm.
This is called coronary heart disease. If it happens anywhere in your legs, artery of your legs, that was called peripheral artery disease, and that eventually can lead to the tissues, the muscles of your legs are not supplied with oxygen, and they're going to die, and some people end up with amputations. So that's the extreme cases if it's not treated. Some steps to take to control hypertension and prevent cardiovascular disease: you have to engage in daily physical activity, limit your alcohol intake, don't smoke, reduce stress, keep blood cholesterol levels below, do you know the number?
200.
200, yep. Maintain a healthy weight and eat a healthy diet. And talking about diet, avoid fast food, canned foods, packaged foods, and processed. Besides the fact that they pretty much have no health benefits, they're loaded with sodium, and increased sodium intake will increase blood volume, that in turn will increase blood pressure. And I just want to give you an example here. The recommended sodium intake is less than 1 teaspoon, and this is for a whole day, and this is it. This is all here. 1 teaspoon, which is about 5 grams. And a lot of the young people, or if you're living on a budget, you're gonna get a lot of canned processed foods. The instant ramen soup, I just wanted to point out, this container has 2 servings. One serving has 400 milligrams of sodium. So if you eat this whole container, it's about 800 milligrams, and this is almost 1/5 of the total sodium you can eat in one day. And this is besides, you might even cook this and you might feel like, tastes like it's not salty enough, and you might add more salt, so you can go over the allowed intake very easy. So another thing you can do is to add more fiber to your diet by eating raw vegetables, whole grains and beans, consume lean meats, and skinless poultry. Limit salt intake, like I said, to what you personally add to your dishes. I hope you got this out too. It's been proven in research over and over again that diets high in animal fat, low in vegetables and fruits, and high in alcohol have been linked to increased risk for heart disease. Maintaining a healthy weight is another great way to lower your risk. One way to measure your weight is to check and see if you're at normal weight is to calculate your BMI, which is body mass index. One way to do that, you divide the weight in pounds by your height in inches squared and multiply by a conversion factor of 703. And just a normal BMI is considered to be between 18.5 and 24.9. A BMI between 25 and 29.9 is considered overweight, and a BMI over 30 is considered to be obese. So, if you wouldn't mind, can we calculate your BMI? Okay. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to have a little handout for you at the end of the presentation where you can check and see if you're within normal, healthy ranges. Also, waist circumference will show if you're at increased risk or not. For men, if you're over 40 inches in your waist, and women over 35, you're at increased risk for heart disease, even if your BMI is within normal limits. So besides these lifestyle changes to lower hypertension and prevent heart disease, there's also medications that you can use. Most of medication, they will either target your heart to decrease your heart rate, they will target your kidneys to produce more antihypertensive hormones, or it can just act directly on your blood vessels to decrease resistance. Anyway, your doctor should prescribe all this. Be careful about a lot of medications that you can find over the counter that contain stimulants. So anytime you start any kind of regimen, just make sure your doctor approves and they consider it safe, or if you have high blood pressure. So I just want to mention that it's very important to take your blood pressure in the morning, because biological rhythms naturally cause pressures to be higher in the afternoon and in the evening. Make sure you don't eat for 30 minutes before you take your blood pressure. You could be eating something that can cause an increase. Don't exercise for at least 5 minutes before you take your blood pressure. Make sure you're calm and no stress. Just be sitting down like you are right now, and make sure you use a proper size blood pressure cup.
This is mine. So.
Okay, so would you like to show me how you do it?
No.
Okay.
It's very simple.
Okay.
Line goes over your
Where
elbow.
artery,
Your-
yeah.
The crease, not too tight. Press start.
Okay.
Relax.
And relax now, and I would recommend you keep a blood pressure log.
I have one for this.
Okay, very good. So, just put the date, write the date, what your blood pressure was, and every time you go in to see your physician, take this in and. And I know you do take some blood pressure medication, correct?
Mhm.
Okay. So your blood pressure is 134 over 93?
It's a little high. I'm taking my pill this evening, so.
Okay, okay. So, it's a little high, so, yeah, just make sure you put it in the blood pressure log. I also have a little hypertension handout for you, just a few, tips and a little summary of what we went over today. Also about cholesterol, since you have high cholesterol, just a few ways to lower it and
Mhm.
keep control. Do you have any questions for me?
No.
No? Well, I just want to thank you again for,
Thank you.
yeah. So if you have any questions anytime, just let me know, call your doctor, and good luck to you, okay?
Thank you.